Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm Sam Chase, your host, and this is the fifth in a series of local election programs. And tonight's guest is Erik Gath. Welcome, Erik. It's good to have you with the show. And what we're going to be talking about is the advisory ballot question that will be on this year's April 1st local election ballot. Ballot question reads, shall the town of Chelmsford amend its zoning and general bylaws to allow for the retail sale and delivery of recreational marijuana? So Erik is going to talk to us and give us his thoughts about what he thinks the town ought to do with that particular ballot question, and hopefully give us a little bit more information about the establishment of these stores generally. So Erik, what we like to do with our guests, our first-time guests, is to have you give us just a little bit of a biographical sketch, and then we'll get into the discussion. So go ahead.
Well, thank you, Sam, and I appreciate you having me on the show. My name is Erik Gath. I live in Chelmsford. I live on Boston Road. I'm married with two girls, 7 and 10 years old. They go to South Row School. I went to UMass Lowell for mechanical engineering. I was there. I was at BLW Engineers in Littleton for 18 years. I was designing HVAC systems. And then in 2017, I designed my first cultivation facility. That's how I discovered the marijuana industry. And since then, I've helped over 100 clients build, design and build dispensaries and grow facilities. So that's kind of how I got into the industry. And then in 2019, I applied for a dispensary license in the city of Malden, and I opened Misty Mountain Shop in 2022.
So you presently own a retail marijuana dispensary shop in Malden, okay?
Correct.
And I would say that I'm just going to take a wild stab at this. I would say that your mechanical engineering background probably was a help in, at least in the design stages of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have a great deal of respect for engineering students. My father used to tell me, listen, if you're going to go to school, learn how to do something useful, okay? And certainly engineering, in any of the engineering disciplines, it's a very useful thing, and it's not the easiest curriculum to navigate, so hats off to you. I have a lot of friends who are engineers, civil engineers, mechanical, electrical, and so forth, and I have a great deal of respect for anybody who goes into the profession because I know how difficult the course of study is. So that's great. So, so you've had a facility since 2019 in Malden. So just to situate this a little bit, when I believe the state started allowing towns to make this decision, whether or not that they would have the allow retail marijuana sales in their community. And of course, as the ballot question reads, it's done by zoning. You have to the town first has to establish zoning that's appropriate for that. So that's the first step, obviously, and then you have to go through all the permitting and all the other stuff. So why don't you walk us through that a little bit? Maybe give us a flavor of what you had to do in Malden to get up and running.
Okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. Just helping other people get permitted and go through the regulations in this industry. There's a lot of red tape, as you're probably aware. So kind of helping that many clients do that helped me with the city of Malden. And the city of Malden there were actually 10 applications for retail locations, and I was the first one awarded that. I completed a business plan that was about 750 pages thick. We had to check off all the boxes. The process there required you to get an approval by what they call a cannabis licensing commission. Mm-hmm. So we did an interview with them.
Now that would be a state agency.
The cannabis license, no, the CCC is the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission.
Yeah, right. So it's state. Yeah.
Okay. Malden created their own CLEC, Cannabis Licensing Enforcement Commission, and that was 5 people from the city of Malden.
So apparently that's, now does the town have to do that, or is that an optional thing?
That was an optional thing
Okay,
that
all right.
Malden chose to do. So, and many other towns choose to do the same thing.
Okay.
It's similar to your liquor commission, liquor licensing.
Yeah, in Chelmsford, it might be that if they chose to do something like that, it could be something that the Board of Selectmen, or excuse me, the Select Board decides to take on.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So that was the first step in Malden. The next step, we went in front of the city council to get a special permit, and that's going to be pretty standard in any town. You might go in front of the planning board instead in Chelmsford.
Now, you were the first one to do it, so.
I was the first one to get approval. Yes.
Right, so that must have been a very interesting city council meeting, or maybe series of meetings. How did that go?
It was. So at the time there were some councilors that were against it, but we obviously got approved. So
Right.
they supported us, and we had a pretty good application, a pretty good location. So our community outreach meeting went pretty well. Typically, for the state, you have to do a community outreach meeting. So you present to the entire city or town and get feedback from the community, and that all went very well. So we were successful with the special permit. The other step is a host community agreement. So in order to apply to the state of Massachusetts, you need to have an agreement with the community, the host community, which would be Chelmsford, and that it kind of goes through community impact fees, taxes, and just different agreements between the applicant and the town. And then you can apply to the state for your license.
Okay. Now, that all makes sense, and that's pretty consistent with other types of activity that have to go through the regulatory process at the town level. Probably the closest thing is a liquor license, I would guess.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, that's interesting. So it took you how long to get all that done?
So the initial application was 2019. Obviously, COVID was mixed in there.
Oh yeah,
And I ended up, so that delayed me about a year, but from May of 2019, and we opened in December of 22.
All right.
So it's about a 2-year process.
About a 2-year process minus COVID, right?
Right.
And hopefully we don't ever have to go through that again.
Right,
you know.
I agree.
So, yeah, that had to have been a killer. You're trying to open a business, any business, and then you get hit with that, you know.
My special permit hearing was scheduled for May 17th, 2020, and they shut down that day.
Oh yeah, of course they did.
So I would have been nice to get a head start on the rest of the rest of the industry, but it's all good.
So, tell me a little bit about the marketing process. So, and what I'm talking about is not after you get established, but you know, there are people in town, and I don't know what the split in Chelmsford is, but if it's not a majority, it would be, I would say, a significant minority of people that might be opposed, okay,
Right.
to this. So how do you go about marketing the notion that this is a good thing for the town?
Yeah. So I think, like you had said, a lot has changed in the last 10 years. In 2016, the presidential election, Chelmsford voted against it. And the laws were, in that election, you know, the majority of Massachusetts voters elected to allow it.
But many towns did not.
Many towns did not. It was like about 50-50 for towns, and Chelmsford was close to a 50-50 vote, but they voted against it, right? I think a lot has changed since then. A lot of people that weren't educated, they didn't understand the products. They thought they were dangerous. They thought that people would be consuming on the streets, different things like that. A lot of that has changed. There's a lot of stores. There's over 300 stores in Massachusetts, and issues with traffic, security, and other types of issues have kind of been alleviated. Creating, you know, having a place to buy safe and a secure and safe place to buy these products, I think, is beneficial. Back when I was, you know, when they were having this vote and I was going through this process, you know, my in-laws, my parents, my grandparents you would have never thought that they would ever touch this stuff. But now a lot of them take gummies every night in order to sleep. So I think that the benefit of being able to purchase it in town, safe, secure way, and having that tax revenue go to the town is beneficial. I think one of the biggest benefits is the tax revenue.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how that works. So you've got retail sales. Go.
Retail sales. So based on the gross revenue, there's a local tax of 3%, and that goes directly to the town.
And based on the rest, so it's a sales tax, basically, is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Local excise tax.
And the entire 3% goes to the town.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'd say that's a pretty good incentive for any town that, especially Chelmsford, where we are taxing our real estate base at the maximum level. So we're constrained and we get almost 80% of our town revenue from the property tax. So when you're in a situation like that, you get that potentiality, I think, is really lends a lot of strength to the argument. And while we're talking about that, I got some numbers from the Department of Revenue forwarded to me by the town manager, and who, incidentally, I have to say, the town manager may have given me the numbers, but I want to make it very clear to the people watching. Town manager does not take a position either for or against this particular ballot question. So I don't want anybody to think that the town manager is promoting this. He's not, okay? He's 100% neutral in this particular situation. And so I just want to make sure folks understand that. The latest numbers that are available from the state are for fiscal year 2023, which is fairly recent. And according to the Department of Revenue, Lowell took in about $812,000 in excise fees. Now we're going to shock people. So that's Lowell, right, with a population of over 100,000 people. The town of Dracut, with a population of around 25,000, I believe, took in almost $1.4 million. $1.4 million at Dracut. Bill Ricker is 327,000. Littleton, which is a fairly small community, about maybe 12,000 people, maybe, 146, and Tingsboro, 231. So this is serious cash that we're talking about. So based on the size of Chelmsford, the population, comparing it with Bill Ricker, I would say at least $250,000 on the very conservative side.
I would
what
agree.
Do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
And I actually think that Bill Ricker and Tingsboro might be skewed a little bit because I think this data might have been a partial year for them.
Could
where
be.
They opened during the year. Tingsboro is doing well over that number.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
I would think that that Chelmsford could do $250,000 plus in tax revenue.
Easily.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's assume. I want to ask you one other question because I hear this a lot from people, and people are very, very concerned that we have the law in Massachusetts that allows for retail marijuana sales, but the federal law is not in sync with that. Okay, so when you hear opposition, do you hear that argument at all? People say, well, I have a hard time with this because the feds don't support it.
Not very frequently, to be
Okay.
honest. Medical marijuana is legal in 39 states. Recreational's legal in 24 states.
24 states, okay.
And so we're almost
half.
halfway there.
Yeah,
we're almost halfway
half.
there, and I think it's going to increase. Obviously, this election just happened, but the fact that it's legal medically in 39 states is a huge benefit.
So that means medically legal means you have to have a doctor's prescription, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Typically, it's a medical card.
All right. So are there any constraints at all? Let's say you open up your shop and a person wants to come in and buy a marijuana product. I mean, are there any constraints? Is there an age limit? Do they have to show ID? Anything like that?
Yes. You have to be 21 plus to enter the facility, to even be on the premises.
So it's like alcohol.
Yeah.
In that regard. Okay.
Correct. And then obviously staff goes through responsible vendor training.
Okay.
All of the staff has background checks, so they can't have past crimes. They're trained to check IDs and then trained when to serve and not to serve. And there are certain limits. So you have to be 21 plus, and you can only buy a maximum of 1 ounce per
visit?
day.
Oh, per day?
Per day,
Okay,
correct.
per day. So I've got, let's see, I'm married, I've got 5 children all over the age of 21, so I send each one in every day. Would you check for something like that, or is that a loophole? Is that allowed?
That is allowed.
Because it's per person,
Correct.
not per family.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
You're allowed 10 ounces per household.
Okay, there you go, good point. 10,
To have
okay.
Possession of 10 ounces per household.
So an alert employee would be presumably on the lookout for what I just described.
Potentially, that's a lot to keep track of, but if you were to get caught with over 10 ounces in your house,
You're in trouble.
I think you're in big trouble with the police.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your direct experience in Malden. So you've been in business, what, 5 years? Or
2.5.
Oh,
So
2.5
yeah,
two and a
December
half
of
years.
22.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking about the
Just over
time
2.
you started to apply. Right. So, okay, so you've had a couple of years of experience. Have you had any problems at all legally with running your operation? I mean, I'm going to assume that people are pretty responsible, your customer base, and we haven't had a lot of difficulty. Am I making the right assumption there?
Believe it or not, you know, people think there's going to be a lot of crime associated with it because it's a.
Yeah, that's the chief
a
argument you
drug.
hear against it. Yeah. Well, alcohol's a drug, isn't it?
It is, but
Yeah.
but it's one of the happiest places to be. Most people coming into a dispensary leave very happy, excited with their purchase. Every once in a while, you will get somebody that's intoxicated, usually on alcohol or something, and that will maybe create an issue with staff, just an interaction, and you won't be able to sell to them.
That was going to be my next question. Okay,
So
that
if
makes sense.
somebody's
Yep.
intoxicated, whether it's alcohol or marijuana, you're not supposed to sell to them. So that's happened, and we've had just nothing major, just had to have them leave the store. But other than that, no real issues.
Never really had to call the police or anything like that. That's good. That's good. And Malden's a good-sized area.
Yeah. Every once in a while, we'll get people that come in with an expired ID, and we can't let them in. Or someone, maybe it doesn't look like them, and we have to reject them from coming into the store. And we have to ask them politely to leave.
Okay. Now, what about number of facilities? So how does the state license you? Is the town restricted to a certain number? How does that work?
So actually, state law, if your town allows retail marijuana facilities, dispensaries, state law basically states that it's based on the liquor stores. So you have to have a minimum of dispensaries equal to 20% of your liquor stores or more. So if you have 5 liquor stores in town, I believe Chelmsford has 6, you would then need to have 1.
Is it stores or
dispensary.
licenses? Because there's a
Stores.
difference. Okay,
Like
so
a package store.
So we're licensed, I believe, for 7 dispensaries, but we only have 6, so it would be based on the 6.
I believe so,
So
yes.
basically, that's one shop for marijuana, right?
And that being said,
Okay.
that's with the state law. But if the town votes, so if we go to the vote in April 1st, and then it proceeds to a vote in November at the next election,
Right.
you could actually have the vote to be. You could specifically state the number of dispensaries if you want. So it can go under that 20% as long as the town votes on it.
Okay. So, so this particular ballot question on the upcoming election, this is an advisory ballot question, and it's asking the residents again, if they approve of the town amending zoning bylaws to allow for the establishment, because if we're not zoned for it, you can't do it, you know, regardless of whether people want it or not. So that's the first step. So let's say this passes. So are you clear as to what the next steps are for the town and for you, assuming that this passes?
I have an opinion on what will happen.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm not perfectly clear on exactly what will happen, but what I think will happen, because this is a non-binding question.
Right.
It's informational purposes only. But if the interest is there and it's positive feedback, I believe what will happen is the board will then try to figure out some regulations to develop a real question for the November ballot.
The select board.
The select board. That's what I believe will happen, because this is just a simple question. Do we want to allow it? There's more to it than that, right? Like, if you're going to vote on it, you want to know where are they going to be located, how many are there going to be, what are we getting out of this, what are the benefits? So I think that would be the next step after this April 1st vote.
Okay. I'm not really sure. I probably should know, but I don't. It would seem to me the first thing that would have to happen is the planning board would have to propose a zoning change article, and then that would have to go before town meeting, because any zoning change has to first be approved at town meeting, and then that might be part of a general ballot question, or maybe it would have to be separate. I'm not sure, okay? But if this passes, and obviously, you know, the reason you're here, I mean, you obviously believe that this is the right thing for cities and towns to do, but you want to open a shop in Chelmsford, right?
I would love to.
Yeah, okay, so that's why you're here. You know, let's make sure the people understand that. You have an interest here. Let's say everything goes according to Hoyle. The town says, yeah, we'd love to have one of these places, and you know, things move along, and you get to the point where now you're able to actually set up shop. So do you have any, again, the zoning has to change. So right now, we have no idea where these things would go. Do you have an idea of where a shop could go in Chelmsford? Have you thought that far ahead?
So there are actually, because medical marijuana is legal in Chelmsford, there are actually there's a zoning map in Chelmsford
That accounts for the medical?
that accounts for the medical.
Okay.
Some towns have elected to just take the medical zoning map and implement that for recreational.
That makes sense. That'd be the easy thing to do.
That would be the easy thing to do. The hope would be that there would be some added areas, because it's very restrictive, very industrial areas.
So, forgive my ignorance, where is the area in Chelmsford? Do you know?
So yes, so if you want, I can show you on this
All
map.
right.
It's basically the gray areas,
Okay.
IA and IS
All right,
zoning.
so that would be in the limited industrial zones.
Limited industrial zones.
All right, so there
correct.
aren't that many in Chelmsford.
So one of those areas stretches from where Industrial Road in Lowell over to 129. That's this area here, which is a decent sized zone. I think over by Press Cafe, that area would be a good spot.
Yep. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
And then over on Drum Hill,
Yep.
I believe, is over here.
Yep. That's correct. So essentially,
There's a small area there.
yeah. So essentially, for the viewers, we're talking generally Drum Hill area and generally the 129 so-called corridor, industrial corridor.
And then a small spot over by, I believe that's Groton Road exit
Okay.
off of Route 3.
All right. Yeah. So presumably it would be limited to those areas. Okay.
That's based on the medical marijuana.
That gives you a lot of flexibility. Now, I should know this, and again, I don't. So educate me. Do we have any facilities currently?
No.
We don't have any
do not.
medical. Okay, we don't. All right.
It would be nice to see maybe an additional zone off of 495 somewhere. I think for revenue purposes, being exposed to 495 would be a great spot, but I'll leave that up to the town.
Okay, so Again, I'm very ignorant on this subject. So you open up a shop. What exactly are you selling in terms of product? Now, when I think of marijuana, I'm old, I'm 78, so I'm stuck back in the late 60s and early 70s. So when people my age think of marijuana and they don't know much about it, they think smoke. That's it, you smoke it. But we're not limited to that, right?
Correct.
All right, so tell me a little bit about the various products.
That is the majority. That's probably 50% of sales.
Okay.
Is what we would call flower. That's the old school bud. Flower and pre-roll joints. But then we have
So they're
vape.
They look like cigarettes?
Correct.
All right, and you sell them that way? Okay, all right.
Those are very popular. Vape pens. You see people using nicotine vapes now, very similar looking. Those are very popular. Edibles come in gummies, chocolates, brownies, things like that.
You don't even know, right? When you
Beverages.
Yeah.
You do know, well, the packaging is very clear.
I put it in a brownie. Can I taste it?
Depends on how much you put in. The brownies you buy at a store, most likely no.
All right, so you actually would sell a brownie product that incorporates this.
Yes.
All right, and you're limited to 1 ounce. So how does that work? I mean, is it 6 brownies over 1 ounce? How does that work?
So there's a marijuana equivalent
Okay.
for edibles. And so there's limits in each category. So there's, in vapes, you're allowed to buy up to, you're testing me here. I want to say 5 grams. Edibles, you're buying up to 500 milligrams, which would be like 5 packages.
Yes, okay.
And then concentrates, you're limited to a specific amount too. So you have vapes, edibles, concentrates, and that's really high potent. That's for not the beginner user at all. But there's limitations. That's
Okay.
equivalent to that 1 ounce.
So a customer walks in, he's going to buy his ounce in whatever form. All right, typically, what can that person expect to spend for that?
So for 1 ounce of flour, you could spend anywhere between $75 and $400.
All right, if that person were to obtain the same amount illegally on the street, how does that price compare to that? Do you have any idea?
It's going to be similar.
Okay.
Because
So
when
it's
we
not,
first
it's not substantially cheaper
on the street.
to buy it legally versus buying it black market, is what I'm getting at.
No. When we first opened, when there were less stores, black market was cheaper.
It was, okay, but now that you have so many stores, you know, supply and demand and so forth has depressed the price of the product legally, and even if it is the same price or a little bit more expensive legally, I think it's worth the risk. I mean, you buy it legally as opposed to, and there's no reason to, because you can do that, you know, if it's allowed in your community. So that makes perfect sense. Well, it seems like you've thought this out, and I'm sure you're going to be following this progress very closely. And if we get a favorable vote on the ballot, I'm going to make a prediction here. I don't want to jinx you, but I have a feeling this might pass, okay? We have a local election here. There's nothing else on the ballot. We're not voting for state or federal offices. You're going to get a turnout, and the nature of the particular election, it's not terribly controversial in any of the races. You're going to get probably between 3,500 and maybe 4,100 or 4,200 people to come out and vote, I'm going to guess. And these are people that normally vote and people who are plugged into the politics of the town, so they're reasonably well informed. So I'm going to guess that this vote is probably going to be favorable. So I would say to you, Erik, I told you the half hour goes by quickly. We're out of time.
Wow.
I appreciate you coming in and explaining all this stuff. I mean, I've learned a few things, and hopefully the folks that are watching the show have got some more information that will help them make a decision on this particular ballot question. So thank you very much. And we'll follow up with you after the vote.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a wrap.